Welcome back to the channel. My name's Adam Smith, and today we head into the finale for Reichbusters Reloaded from Monolith Games. In part number 1, my squad of Brick, Claudine, Sally, and O'Reilly were able to take down everyone on the watchtowers, get inside the mansion, take down a whole bunch of individuals inside the main area there off to the left, and then we're able to open up the door and get inside the office, taking out enemies in there, and then grab the objective. Claudine currently has the documents, one of the objectives we need, and we have to head to that exit door up to the top north right. But we also have a secondary objective as a veteran level where we can go after the portal on the far left, and we've got the demolition charges in hand. O'Reilly's got them, and he's already on his way. Now, O'Reilly was able to push very far into the mansion. He's in a corridor area with a number of doors around him. He'll be heading north towards the portal because he's got those demolition charges, as I mentioned, to try to take that portal out. That's the second objective. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is currently we're in the pre-alarm phase. You can see the mission tracker token with the green right arrow has currently not landed on the discretion token yet, but once it does, it's going to trigger the alarm, unless, of course, we use something like a grenade or something really loud that's going to trigger some type of noise. And then we'll also have the alarm being triggered. But either way, in this finale, you are going to see the post-alarm phase of gameplay. Now, one thing I forgot to do during part number 1, round 3 in the upkeep phase, basically at the very end of the video, was to reset all the basic action tokens. Very easy to do now. We'll go ahead and do that, and we're going to go right into round number 4 and the hero turn. So for this hero phase, let's try and accomplish as much as we can possibly do before the alarm goes off, and I've got a lot more problems to deal with. We'll start things off with Claudine this time. She's going to use a basic action token in order to vril a weapon. She can do this because of the area accessory card in her space. After I spend the basic action token, I can choose whichever of these 2 weapons that she's holding to vril. The stats for the weapon has changed. It's great timing to do this because not only is she far away from enemies, she doesn't have to worry about potentially having to use this right now, but the second that the noise is no longer a factor once the alarm goes off, she can go absolutely crazy with this weapon. Now, I'm quite tempted to actually use a move for her next basic action, but I'm going to instead actually draw 2 cards because she's only got 2 cards left in hand. She did a lot of what went on in part number 1, so I think we need to recoup some of her hand to give her the ability to do more things in the future, knowing full well that the room she's going to move back into will have reinforcements coming into it. So let's go ahead and put this token right on the draw 2 cards, and we'll take those cards. So she'll be adding these 2 cards into her hand. If at any time during gameplay the hero's pile of action cards is empty, like Claudine's here, you go ahead and shuffle the discard pile to create a new deck. You do the exact same thing for the wound deck and also the reinforcements deck. I'm happy with what Claudine was able to pull off. Let's move on to a different squad member. Now, I think that O'Reilly's going to need some backup where he's headed, so I think I'm going to send one of my other squad members over there, and I think what I'll do is have Sally use her card here called Go Ahead. At the very top section of this, you can use it as an action. Discarding the card, another operational hero on your tile moves 1 area, and then Sally gets to draw an action card. Brick is on the same tile as Sally, and she's going to tell him to get moving. I think Brick is the perfect person to back up O'Reilly because he's got a lot of cards in hand. He also has armor-piercing rounds, and based on the nastiness that's on the left-hand side of the game board, I think he might be the right one to bring into that area. Plus, he can pick up an additional armor-piercing rounds card if he wants right now in his area. And that's exactly what he's going to do, spending a basic action token in order to take another card of armor-piercing rounds. These are discardable cards that allow him to put some nice wounds on individuals that have armor. For Brick's second basic action token, he's going to spend it in order to move to get in the same space as O'Reilly. That should give O'Reilly some nice backup. Sally's got 2 basic actions still left, so let's go ahead and have her move into the office area and vril a weapon. So I decided to break up my squad in order to prepare for what is to come. Out of the 2 options, we're going to go ahead and vril the machine gun. And that's honestly all I want to do with Sally. Now, strategy-wise, O'Reilly's got 2 basic action tokens left. There's kind of 2 approaches I could take here, maybe even more than 2, but the 2 obvious ones I'm seeing, at least initially, is I could crack the door, and then I could have O'Reilly start blasting into the room, or I could have even Brick start shooting into the room. Of course, as soon as I do that, any noise generated is going to automatically trigger the alarm, but we know the alarm's going to trigger at the end of the round anyway, so it's not that bad, except for the fact that the room just to the south of where Brick and O'Reilly are does have a green token, which will spawn, and of course we have this massive behemoth here as well. So it's a fun game of whether we should push the envelope during this turn or wait until the end of the turn for everything to spawn and keep those doors closed. I think I've decided to stick with my original plan to be nice and quiet. So I'm going to go ahead and spend a basic action token to draw 2 cards for O'Reilly, better preparing him for all the craziness to come. We just got 2 cards in hand, and honestly, the key to success is very tempting to use right now. This one over here, also very good. Now, based on the cards I just got and the fact I got 1 basic action token left with O'Reilly, I am super tempted to crack open that south door and take a look and see what kind of enemies we have down there. I do have cards that could get me into the room to be able to make attacks, so I think I could clear that room out no problem. There's also an area accessory card in there, a storage crate, and I'm very curious as to what that is. He's going to go for it. He's cracked open the door. Let's find out what enemies are in this room. There's a decent amount in here, and unfortunately, there is 2 dogs in here as well as a zombie. That's not good, but we do get to reveal what the storage crate is. We found ourselves provisions storeroom. It says draw 2 loot cards and place them in this area. Inside the room is body armor. That will certainly come in handy if we can grab that in the future, and some ammo. Here's a look at the 2 cards for the enemies we just ran into. So we got the dog here, and you're going to notice something in the top left-hand corner that is an alertness icon. It might be called something in the final version a little differently, but either way, it means these enemies, the dogs, are going to move and attack. They're going to activate right now, right after being revealed. The zombie is not going to activate, but you've seen the zombie stats in part number 1. Now, as you expect, the dogs are all up close and personal, so that melee icon there shows a 5, but it also shows a +5 beside it. Both dogs are part of the same enemy type, so both of them are going to get the chance to move. They're moving straight into the room with our heroes, and of course they're trying to attack us melee. So the +5 on the card, and there's an additional +5 you saw that was a little bit smaller. That's for all the supporting other enemies of the exact same type adding into the equation, so the attack value is a 10. Now, as an example, if O'Reilly happened to be in the same room as the dogs when they spawned, which of course didn't happen, but if they activated, they would just go right after O'Reilly. In this case, they both move into the room where there are 2 heroes, but they have to choose a targeted hero. Now, they have 3 movement on their enemy card, so they only had to move 1 in order to get into a space with heroes. Once they got into that space, there was 2 heroes in there, so which one are they targeting? It comes down to these 3 things. The first thing you look for is who has the most wounds. We have nobody with wounds, so that is not part of the equation. Next, we look for the individual with the fewest cards in hand. That certainly could decide who is going to be attacked. And then finally, if they're both equal in cards, then the heroes get to decide the target hero. No wounds across either of the heroes, so next is the card check, and each of them actually have 7 cards in hand, so they have the exact same amount, and so because of this, I get to choose. Brick is going to do the defensive check because he has 2 defense, like all of the heroes do, but his actual ability is called Strong. It says when making a defensive test, you can add 1 green die to your dice pool, and when making a melee attack test, you can add a black die to your dice pool, so the green die extra gives him a leg up on O'Reilly. Now, an attack 10 coming from the dogs is no joke whatsoever. We have 2 green dice for defense by default. I get an additional green die added into the fray thanks to the strong ability on my character, hence the reason why I chose Brick out of the 2. I'm also going to use this card here at the bottom, Tough. It allows me to get 3 automatic defensive successes right out of the gates, which is good. I think with the 3 dice we can pull off what we need, but I'm a little bit worried, so I'm going to go ahead and use the bottom portion of this, knowing full well that 10 is quite a bit to get up to, and we'll be able to reroll any blank test results we get on the first roll. Now, I've also got other cards in hand that could be really beneficial right now if I wanted to go crazy on the defensive train to really make sure I don't get hit, but I think that's okay where I'm at. But this card here I want to show you, very good. It's cornered, very thematic for what's going on right now. If I use this, it would actually add 2 more green dice into the fray. I think I'll hold on to this for a moment when things get really ugly. So let's go ahead and roll the dice, and I get a free reroll for any blank results, 1 time only, as this card is discarded the second after you've used it. So let's go ahead and roll. See what we get. All right, we got 2 successes, and we got, I shouldn't say successes, these are special results, so that's awesome. So we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, allowing me to roll 2 additional dice, defensive dice, into the fray, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. But before I do, let's go ahead and make that reroll on the blank die based on the card that I use, and wow, we might have got it right there. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, we don't need to go any further. I'm really happy Brick was able to take that attack on O'Reilly's behalf. O'Reilly was a little crazy cracking that door and seeing what was inside. The dogs come flying out, and then Brick decides to jump in the way with his strong ability and saves the day from O'Reilly taking a wound, most likely. Now, O'Reilly's not going to sit by and just watch things happen. He's going to go ahead and spend a card right now for the top section in action, discarding the card to make 2 melee attacks. He's going to choose to target each of the dogs. It's going to have the lethal keyword attached, and he's choosing to use his sledgehammer, which has the deadly keyword attached. And the deadly keyword is once per attack test, he can spend a special result as 3 successes. That's good. Lethal allows him to reroll black and red dice that are blank once. The defense of the dogs is a 5, so let's see if we can make that happen. We also have all the keywords, deadly and lethal, to help us out. Let's see how we go. We got, whoa, okay, so we got ourselves 2 successes there, 2 from the start, and we can also choose, if we wish, once per attack test, we can spend one of the stars that we have in order to gain 3 successes. So essentially, this turns into a 5, 6, 7, more than enough to take out a dog, and dogs don't drop loot, so the one dog we just targeted is gone. Let's go ahead and roll for the next dog and see whether we can get the same kind of outcome. I'd like to see that happening. Oh my gosh, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, more than enough. So even though the dogs got the jump on them and almost took down Brick with a wound, O'Reilly was able to swing his sledgehammer and wipe them both out. Both the dogs have been taken out. We're going to go ahead with one more card on O'Reilly's side. I think this will finish off the actions for all the heroes to end off the entire hero phase, and that's going to be the key to success. He's going to go ahead and move one area into that room, and he's going to make a wrench attack against the zombie with a +1 black die. Now his wrench has 2 black dice. He's going to add the 1 from the card, so he's got 3 going in. So we got 3 dice. Let's see how we do. We do have the lethal keyword attached to the wrench. So it says once per attack, you can spend one of those special symbols for 3 successes. So that could certainly help us out if we need it. Now the zombie is a higher defense than the dogs for sure at a 7. So here's hoping we can pull this off. We got ourselves a special and 3 successes. This is awesome. So we get 2. We can also go ahead using lethal and make that a 5. So we have 5, 6, 7, 8. That's enough. The zombie is gone. O'Reilly did a fantastic job. No more enemies within line of sight. Now into round 4, enemy turn, and that's not going to have anything going on because yet again, we were dead silent. We're now inside the upkeep phase, so any ongoing effect cards are removed. We don't currently have any. Every single individual that has less than 5 cards in hand gets to draw one up. These 2 individuals are the only ones that get cards this turn, and you can see it that Claudine got a really nice one. Basic action tokens have all been taken care of, and at this point in time, if any heroes are in a space with a loot card, they can pick something up. O'Reilly absolutely wants to stay alive as long as possible, so he is going to take the body armor. That's an awesome pickup for him because he's got the Vril shield as well as body armor on now, so he's really geared up. And then over in the office area, there is a radio. And I'm going to have Claudine take that radio as she seems to be setting herself up for a powerful turn in the future. That's going to do it for the cards available to be picked up based on where the heroes are currently standing. And now we go to the mission tracker. I've been using silence to my advantage the entire playthrough long, but no more as the mission tracker token moves on top of the discretion token. The discretion token is now flipped over and placed above to show the alarm has been sounded. And you can see we're getting closer and closer to that endgame token. We'll have to check to see if we have the objectives completed, but there's a number of steps to go through right now with the alarm sounding. You can use the token, flipping it over as I did, or you can use the miniature to place there instead. I've got both of them up there. The first thing you're going to do when the alarm sounds is flip over every single inactive enemy token in the game. Now, we did a pretty good job of clearing out the majority of the tokens, but in that back room with the scientists, there are 2 Bs and 2 Fs, and based on the mission card, that means 2 dogs, as well as Experiment 6XX, 2 of them. I don't know what kind of experiments the scientist has been doing in that room, but there's a mixture of dogs in there, regular ones, and also mutated ones. As you've seen before, here's the enemy card for the regular dogs, and the experimental dogs look like this. And that's all you have to do to deal with the alarm. There's 2 things to keep in mind going forward, though. Number 1, noise no longer matters. So me being quiet, I can start using my guns like crazy. And the second thing is, at the end of the enemy's turn, there's going to be a reinforcement step added in now. So you'll see the red token, the A token up there with that room full of dogs and mutated dogs. There's going to be enemies coming in that location and also the other location on the east side. So future enemy turns are going to be a lot more wild, and that's going to do it for round number 4. Round number 5 begins, and the heroes start things off. First action of round number 5, I'm going to try something a little bit different. Inside O'Reilly's hands, I want to get him more cards in hand, and a quick way to do this is to use this one here, 4 Vril Clover. It's an action discard. You roll 3 red dice, and for each result, you follow through the chart. We can get additional action cards this way, but there's a risk of a permanent wound. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I want to keep the basic action tokens that he has, and because he has such good body armor and the Vril shield, I think he will be able to sustain damage from enemies pretty good. So I think I can pull this off and get some extra cards into his hand. So let's see how we do with a roll. All right, so spending this card here is going to allow me to get 1 draw of a card here and 1 draw of a card here. This one gives nothing. So essentially, we used a card, but we gained 2. Here's a card that came into his hand, and he's got no more cards left in his deck, so he's going to shuffle up his discard pile and replenish. And the card he got off the top of the deck, once it was replenished, is Vrili. Now, I was actually hoping to get some cards that had something to do with movement, and he hasn't got any yet in his hand, so I'm going to go ahead and dig a little further. We'll go ahead and spend a basic action token to draw 2 cards and hope we get some movement. So the next one off the top here we go. We got one that allows us to move an area and draw a card. That'll come in handy. And the next one off the top is making 2 melee attacks. Let's go ahead and use the card that I just got. This one allows me to move an area, so he's going to move back into the same area as Brick. He's going to leave the ammo behind. He's now inside the same room. Now Brick's going to help him out by cracking open the door to the north. Now the painful thing is the second the door cracked open, all the enemies in that room except for the scientist have the awareness or alertness icon, which means they're all going to activate. So again, with the mission card, you're going to go from top to bottom. The dogs are first. They activate as a group. They're coming into the same room as me, and again, have to choose their target hero. There's 2 individuals in here. Nobody has wounds, but in terms of cards, looking over at Brick, he's got 2, 3, 4, 5 cards in hand. And over here with O'Reilly, I think he has more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. So they're going after Brick. And we had a similar attack happen earlier. So these 2 dogs, again, are working as a group. So their attack value is 10. Now the question is whether I want to use that card that Brick had from before that I chose not to use to add additional green dice in the fray, but knowing full well that the other enemy type is going to come into this space and also target Brick, I need to think whether that's a better time to wait, and actually it's going to be a 12 attack value for them. So I'm going to hold on to these 2 dice for that next attack wave coming at me of enemies. Let's go ahead and roll these 3 dice and see if we get the 10 we need. This is probably not looking good this time. As you can see, you're not going to be able to defend against every single attack. As things start to ramp up, the enemies are going to get through, and at this point, poor Brick is taking a wound. So a wound is coming through to me. We're going to go ahead and reveal this and read the top section of the card, and it states, sluggish reflexes. You sustain recoil. Discard a card from your hand. I'm going to choose to let this one go for Brick. Now we're going to take a look at the value in the middle of the card known as the damage threshold. So to find out what the damage threshold is for the attack that just happened, you take the attack value of 10, you minus it based on the defensive roll we got, which is 5, and that is a 5. So if we happen to have a difference between those of 5 based on the card or higher, then this card turns into a permanent wound. So that's exactly what's happening. And then we go ahead and we read the effect on the bottom. It says you can no longer play reaction cards. So that card being a permanent wound is going to be slotted into the dashboard, and it takes up one of the 4 slots that leads us to being downed. And the fun is not over because Experiment 6XX has a group of 2 coming into the space to go after Brick. The experiments come rushing through the door. Brick is definitely the target hero as he has the most wounds out of the 2 in the space. Now Brick is going to use that card I was talking about before for the bottom portion to get an extra 2 green dice, so he'll be rolling 5 at least, but the attack value of these 2 together is 12. 2 green dice by default, 1 extra for Brick for being who he is with his special ability, and 2 additional thanks to him using a card right now called Cornered. Let's go ahead and make the roll and see whether we can defend against this. It's going to be tough at 12. That is certainly a good start because at this point we have 3 is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and we get to roll 2 more dice on top of it. So we'll go ahead and roll another green die into the fray, and we got a blank. That is not good, and we get to roll 1 more into the pool, and we got 3. That's 13. We did defend. We definitely need those extra dice for Brick to be able to defend against that. Let's continue on. I'm going to use this action card for O'Reilly, a really good one. The Core of the Problem, making 2 attacks with +3 successes going in for each of them. And I get to select the wrench for this and target a different enemy for each attack. All right, so we're going into this very first attack against one of the experiments, and those individuals have 6 defense. So this is why I'm using this card right here to make 2 3 success attacks to start things off. I got 3 already, which means we just need 3 more. I've got my 2 black dice, and O'Reilly's special allows him, if he wants to add a red die into the equation. So I'm going to do it. There is the risk of overload, which could actually hurt him, but we'll go for it anyway. Let's go ahead and make the roll to see if we get what we need. Oh, it's a good and bad situation here. So we got the 3 that we need off these dice. I don't need to roll anymore. Now, this individual does not drop any loot, so I can't use this special for that. And I also can't use this black special die to cancel out this overload because they're not the same die color. They have to be red, so I'd have to have a red special to cancel out that overload. So that overload is still going to happen, meaning that because I decided to use the extra red die known as the Vril experiment in this attack, it actually hurt me in the end. Now, unlike when you receive a wound from a regular enemy and then you determine based on the damage threshold in the middle if it turns into a permanent wound, when you go ahead and use Vril and it becomes an overload situation, you completely ignore the top section of the card and the value because it's going to be a permanent wound, so you just resolve the bottom portion of the card. So I've just given O'Reilly a permanent wound for risking things. It says you can no longer play basic action tokens to make move actions. That is going to be a problem. So let's go ahead and use a reactionary card here to discard. It says after sustaining a wound, which we just did, we can now move one area. So I can actually get O'Reilly out of that area heading north towards the portal. And it says if the wound is permanent, discard the wound card you just drew. I am so glad that I had that card in hand. It's absolutely perfect for this situation, so we no longer have to deal with this, and that allows us to use our basic action tokens going forward for move actions. So my first attack kills off one of the experiments, as you know, and then the second attack is not going to happen because I chose to react and move. So O'Reilly heads into the area with the scientist, and the scientist card actually has some description around that. You'll see it right here on the card. It states, cautious, when this enemy moves, they cannot enter a hero's area, and when a hero enters their area, they move to an adjacent area. So this scientist is going to go away. It's going to move to an adjacent one. I can choose where it goes, so I'm going to have it head towards the portal. Now, the reason I chose to push him towards the portal is that it's better for me because if I move him into the space, the corridor with the enemies, he's actually going to help out all the enemies that have the experiment keyword on their card, and that is going to be those experiments for sure, getting a benefit. As it states on the scientist card, it says the enemy adds +1 to the attack and support values of every other enemy with experiment in the same area. So I do not want this scientist anywhere near the experiment, so I'm pushing him up north. Next, I'm using another card here at the very top as an action to discard one of our wound cards, but I don't have one. Again, you don't have to go ahead and resolve everything that's on the action portion. You just have to do it top to bottom. Now, I could have used this instead of the other card, but the whole point of using the other card and this one was to generate enough movement to get me close to the portal as fast as possible. So we're moving one more area. So that's going to have O'Reilly go into the same space with the portal, which is exactly where he wants to be, and the scientist, again, can't be in that same space, so he'll move south. Works out nicely because O'Reilly is very much focused on melee attacks, so he's not the kind of character that's going to be able to do any kind of ranged attacks. So now the scientist is within one space of Brick when he starts moving and doing some actions, which he certainly needs to do in order to clear that corridor of enemies. He might be able to shoot into that room and take out the scientist. Now, it mentions in the mission briefing that when you have the demolition charge, in order to use this, you have to be in the same space as the portal, and then you have to use one of your basic action tokens to use the give and take option, and that's going to allow you to place this demolition charge in that area. And that's all it says to do in order to complete the objective. So at this point, we have the documents, which we've picked up, and we've now placed the demolition charges at the portal. We now just need to reach the exit to get out of here. Now my focus changes back to Brick. He's got some enemies in this space, and we certainly want to get rid of them. Now, as you can see, he doesn't have cards that are going to help him with attacks, so this is going to be a little tricky. I might have to use his last basic action to draw 2 cards. Now, the only other option I have looking across my cards right now and who has available actions and different things they could spend would be Sally. Sally's on the opposite side. She could potentially, with a basic action token, take Claudine's grenade and then start moving over. If she can get adjacent to where Brick is, she can throw the grenade into that room and take out everybody in the room, but she would also wound Brick. But honestly, based on how rough things are for Brick over in that corner, what he's got left, he really can't do much because he has a lot of range, but he has no ability to get out of the space, so he can't shoot anybody in there, so he needs some help. So Sally spends a basic action token to move. She's now going to go ahead and spend one of her cards here. I'll show you it. It's an action. This will allow her to do a movement of one area, and then she can do an attack if she wants. I also forgot to mention I used the other basic action that she has in order to give and take the grenade from Claudine when she was in the same office room with her. And as it states right here, all miniatures in an adjacent area sustain a wound, and the heroes, the wound is permanent. So in a last-ditch effort to help, Sally throws a grenade right past Brick into the same room, blowing up all of the enemies in there and also hurting Brick in the process. The only thing that matters on the wound card is the bottom portion of the card because it's a permanent wound. It says your hand is limited to 3 cards. Immediately discard any extra cards. Brick now has 2 permanent wounds, which is not good, but he's got 3 cards in hand, so he doesn't have to discard any. That's going to do it for the hero turn. In round number 5, we now move to the enemy's turn. So in this enemy's turn, being that we're in post-alarm, there's no more surveillance check because the alarm's already gone off. So we start at the very top of the mission card and go all the way down. At the very near bottom of the card is the Scientist and the Howler. These are the only two enemies currently in play. So the Scientist will activate first and try to move. And at this point in time, the Scientist is not going to move because, as it states right on its card, it's not going to ever move into a space with a hero. And if a hero moves into its space, it's going to run away because it is cautious. Now the Howler has other plans. The Howler is a different beast altogether, and as you can see, his movement is going to be spent. He only has 1 point of movement to crack open the door. Essentially, he smashes that door straight off of its hinges. Now, I'll show you the card for this thing, as it's very interesting compared to the rest of the enemies. You'll see a keyword there in the bottom left-hand corner, that red one. That one tells us that this card is very special in that you're going to go through 2 stages against this enemy. It has all kinds of abilities here on the side to talk about. It is very deadly from close up, but has absolutely no range. So right now, it does its move, then it's going to do its attack, but it's not going to be in the same space as me because it used its movement point value in order to crash the door open. But in the future, it's going to come out. So we're going to have to get out of here as fast as possible. Now, if we attack this thing and go after it, it's got 2 stages. This is the first stage you go through when you go after the value here of 8, and then it flips over to this next stage, and then it's killed after that. Of course, the alternative in this scenario might be just run as fast as humanly possible away from it and not let it get close to you, because if it does get close, it's not going to be pretty. Now, for the first time ever, we're doing a reinforcement step at the end of the enemy's phase, so let's go through that. We draw a reinforcements card off the top of the deck and flip it over to find out what we have. Now, in the very top left, leading into the space of the Scientist, there is a reinforcement A, and then on the far right-hand side of the board, which is just above where the office is, close to where the exit is actually leading into the exact same area, we have B. There is no C. So it's as simple as taking a look across the rows and then filling those areas with enemies based on the mission card. So that's going to be 1 officer, 2 soldiers, and then one of those tiny little aliens all piling into that room with the Scientist. And the other reinforcement token is going to have 1 soldier, 2 zombies, and a little alien. The reinforcements are going to love throwing a wrench into the equation, coming out in front of exit doors, near objectives, and other key areas of the map. We now go into the upkeep phase for round number 5. We're going to discard any cards that have the ongoing effect. We don't currently have any. We're going to draw up action cards, but remember that Brick cannot have more than 3, so even though he has 3 in hand, and he could normally draw a card, he's not going to. O'Reilly and Sally are the only ones that get cards this time around, and here they are. All the basic actions have been replenished, and each of our characters, if in a space with a token or a loot card, can go ahead and grab one if they want, but there are none for all 4 of us currently. And the mission tracker's moving from 5 to 6. We are so close to the end of this one. All right, so we have 1 more full round to play. Round number 6 begins with the hero turn. Now, it's worth mentioning, yes, you can wait until the end of round 6 for this mission in order for the end game token to hit, and then you check if you've got your objectives completed, but you can successfully complete the mission earlier. So if you meet the 2 objectives, in other words, the portal has been blown up based on putting the demo charge there, and as long as I get Claudine to the exit tile, that is going to complete both objectives and we get a win. So I'm going to focus on getting that done as fast as possible. Claudine here is in the office off to the side. She's going to use a card I've had her holding for quite some time. And it's her grenade card, and it states all miniatures in adjacent areas sustain a wound. For heroes, this wound is permanent, but there's no heroes in that area. She tosses the grenade right out the door and torches the entire space. Next, she's going to go ahead and use one of her basic action tokens to move. That's going to get her to the door. Now, Sally's going to go ahead and use her basic action token to move into the same space. And she's going to crack open the door. And behind that door is the exit tile. And at this point in time, Claudine, taking a look at her cards, is going to do right now, just seeing whether she's got any movement in here. We have one that says after an enemy has entered your tile. That's not going to work for this moment. Another one here is a reaction after drawing a wound. She can move an area. That's not going to work. But we do have aggression, and aggression definitely works. She's going to use this card right here. It's allowing her to use it as an action, discarding it. She can move one area, make an attack in the order of choice. I'm going to go right for the movement and get her out. And that, my friends, is a victory. We have successfully completed both objectives based on the mission briefing. That was a lot of fun, and you can tell that because we were able to stay so quiet for so long, it helped us out, because if the alarm had gone earlier, that giant behemoth would have been out in the middle, and that would have been a lot more to deal with trying to take that thing down. So we were able to push the envelope quite nicely at the very beginning to be able to give us the opportunity to escape before things got too crazy. You can see the objectives written out here, which we've completed both of them. And you can see right here in the rulebook, the mission ends when an endgame condition is met, usually after a certain number of rounds or when one or more objectives are met, whichever comes first. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up my GameFound preview for Reichbusters from Monolith. This one's currently on GameFound right now. You'll find the campaign link in the pinned comment and video description. Join us on Discord to discuss this one, and it's also worth mentioning in the pinned comment is also my old playthrough of this one, the original version, which if you watch that and watch this, you'll certainly see the streamlined differences between both of them. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought about what you saw, and as always, keep on rolling solo.